Welcome to The Breadwinners, the podcast about the never-ending hustle and its impact on all aspects of our lives. We're interested in what it takes to keep everything going.
This podcast is about working, family, research, and policy. We consider the research, talk to experts, and share our takes on what we're all learning about breadwinning. Each week, I'm joined by Jennifer Owens. She writes about working, wellness, and women, and founded the Working Mother Research Institute.
And I'm joined by Rachael Ellison. She is an executive coach and management consultant who works with companies big and small to design workplace policies that work for all employees. So, Rachael, I have a new client for you.
Okay.
It's Basecamp. And yeah, well, they seem, they look like they're doing a little bit of rebuilding, and they maybe could use some help with policy, especially around the DEI conversation.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't follow this sort of news all the time and go, what? Here's a scoop. Basecamp is a product management software company, and they've been around for like more than a decade. And they had a meeting where they had discussed, like, I don't know what a joke list of names, of customer names they had come across in their 15 years of business, where they, like, look at this silly name. And the silly names had a lot of Asian and African origin sprinkled among them. And this company had formed a new DEI group that was very nascent. And one of their first things they called out was, this company practice, maybe not so good. Like this is where we're not having an inclusive mindset when it comes to thinking about our customers, for one thing, let alone each other. And so in reaction, the founders were taken aback and they said, okay, we're shutting down that list, but we're also shutting down the diversity, equity, inclusion group, and also no more talking about societal and political things at work. And, oh, by the way, 2/3 of the employees then resigned after a very tempestuous meeting when all this stuff popped up, where a lot of conversation around white supremacy and white privilege not really existing, and it just not a very inclusive conversation was happening. And people felt like no, we can go somewhere else and work in a more inclusive environment. So all of which made me was thinking a lot about bringing your full self to work.
Right.
And that your full self includes what you think about issues in our society.
Sure.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of companies are dealing with this. I mean, listen, you have an incredibly homogeneous workforce, not only in terms of like, oh, we're all white or we're all women, but in that where it's the thinking, like we see the world all in the same way.
Right.
Those that I pin them over there. But for those of us who are working in workplaces where there are many points of view, and to have a committee where that's the point, is how do we bring everyone together? How do we recruit better? How do we, I don't know, how are companies having these conversations right now? Because this doesn't seem like the right way to have it.
No. I think it's interesting. I think there is, in many ways, an opportunity right now to have conversation. Like, I think that this is a conversation that is happening in a way that feels very different than what I'm hearing is going on out there.
Yeah.
Not shockingly, but, people are starting to have very honest conversations, particularly over the past year since the murder of George Floyd. Like, I'm seeing a real change in how companies are addressing and attending to, specifically at the leadership level, issues around DEI. And so this just sort of comes out of nowhere to me in a way. I was trying to remember, is their CEO, is Jason Fried the guy who wrote the 4-Hour Workweek?
Ooh, I don't know. I know he's written a lot of books about, team management, but I'm looking that up as I vamp.
Well, because what is interesting to me is, like, if you have a 4-hour work week, if that whole idea is like, we really don't have to do so much work in the office, like it's, like creativity comes when it comes, and we have, if you're kind of giving this if you're focusing on independence in that way, around the work, right? Are you really able to cultivate a safe, productive, and
I don't think
collaborative
he is.
working environment?
As
Or he's not.
I think he is. But he is very pro on having a like 40-hour work week. He says there's a essay here of like why the CEO of Basecamp only allows employees to work 32 hours a week, and I think it's Tim Ferriss who does the four.
Tim
Maybe
Ferriss. That's what
yeah.
I was thinking.
So
Sorry.
there's actually, if you start Googling Jason Fried and Tim Ferriss, they actually, worlds collide about 40-hour work weeks versus 4-hour work weeks. But
Got it.
but he is, that's what's oddly disappointing about this, other than the crux of the matter. But here's a guy who has been going out into the public and saying, I think there are ways that we can work together better. And here, let's talk about it. Let's do it. And then, I don't know, this is truly when they always say triggered, like something trigger. I guess the idea that you have something going on in your team, which is only 57 people, like you can almost see 57 people all in one room together. It
Right.
doesn't, you only have to turn a little bit if you're, doing the tech thing and you're all in an open office, but that you would have a practice that is a cavity. I mean, having a list of making fun of customer names, what are you doing? And to have that kind of lifted up, it's like, is it embarrassment? Is it, that's not me. And, it's defensiveness for sure.
It's defensiveness yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the most disgusting practice. I mean, it's so abhorrent that it's just kind of shocking.
Well, and I think this is and it's obviously a failure in leadership. There's one of their top guys resigned, and like there's been, the fallout continues, but it's just a shame. And I know it's a headache. I mean, you just want to get the work done. Can't we all just get along? All that sort of stuff. Right. And it's like, no, you have people on your team who are in pain,
right.
and who are bringing this forward. I don't know. I think might it have been, dear podwife, a moment to say, yeah, let's talk about why we started that list and how it,
yeah, no,
right?
Yeah. Although, I wonder, I wonder if conversations are going there. Like, I think when I'm hearing about companies where they're having really honest conversations about DEI and really starting to expand the dialogue, like, I don't know if it's as easy for leaders to commit to not only expanding the dialogue, but also being willing to own their own mistakes within the organization. And like, I think that's a different level of accountability that is actually kind of a hard one to ask.
Real hard. Like if you don't have it in you, it's hard to say you have to do it, right? You have to have a willingness. You can't force that on people. Obviously, this guy, and it's the expectation gap that he expected that he was Mr. I'm making an assumption here, but I'm sure he sees himself as, what a great boss. I'm a great boss. and the gap between, he's got a team that had been together a very long time saying, no, well, we have issues.
Yeah.
He fell right in that chasm and hit every rock on the way down.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's really hard for folks to get their head around some of the mistakes that they've made in creating a culture, and not to mention like how when they've become, when they've contributed to something that is offensive and makes people feel unsafe.
Yeah. And it's funny, this is the thing, is that you can do the videos, like when you're at big companies and they make you do a video about like, what are microaggressions? What's sexual harassment? But, when you start to muse in a public meeting, as their head of strategy did, that wasn't sure if there really was white supremacy at the company, I I don't know. There's a hubris there. Then that's truly white privilege in all of its many splendored glories.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
you could just noodle on that topic in front of everyone. I think you need to step away and have that conversation in your head, or have a private conversation, and then come to a team that is desperately looking at you and saying, "Hey, we want to have an honest conversation," and have a because I just imagine him saying, I mean, sure, there's that one time, it seems, much like you would do in any other part of business, this is a moment you have to prep for this conversation, right?
Yeah.
You have to have a bit of structure. You have to have, some skills on how to listen, and how to, and also isn't it, it must be more than one conversation, right? I
Yeah.
mean, right?
You mean, should it be more
like,
of a conversation, or has it been one conversation then?
No, I think that like if you were doing this as a leader and you were talking about these difficult topics, this is not a one and done type
Never one and done.
exercise, right?
Never one and done. I mean, you need to also be thinking about what are the many different ways, not just what is the one conversation that I need to explain away or justify or defend or whatever that's happening in this case,
Right.
whatever nonsense is taking place. But also, like, what are the different avenues you have for having these conversations? What are the different audiences? What are the different collection of people within your organization, right? Like, it's not like you just want to have all staffs every month where you're talking about this, or you want to have like subgroups of folks who are having conversations about this. You don't change the culture by having a one and done conversation in a big group once.
Yeah.
But there is kind of there has to be a recognition that the culture itself needs to be changed, right? And so if you're pushing the other way on that,
and then eventually accountability, if pockets do not change, that's a whole other thing. I mean, we're talking about having the actual discussion, but eventually, then what do you do when we've all come to this agreement of like, this is what our culture, what we want it to be, what we're working towards, and then not only what to do when someone is antithetical to the culture, but how do you react? How do you hold them accountable for matching the culture you're trying to become?
Right.
Because I've seen that way too many times, mostly in the sphere of flexible work. That's where mine is, but in this area too. But what do you think about his, then the flip side is you don't do any of this and you just say, there are no societal or political discussions no longer on our company's internal chat forums. I mean, is that, like an answer, like work is work, life is life, no integrating it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the more
draconian
and expensive things that I've seen. And I mean, I think it's just so interesting. We were talking about this a bit earlier before we started the recording, but just thinking about the tech culture, and it is really supposed to be a place where people can have these very, where you can bring your dog and drink your kombucha.
Yeah. Right. And then you all go out and play, what's the frisbee golf? And, like, I don't know, you do all those, I'm young and my entire life revolves around work. We don't want you to ever leave.
Right.
And especially in the social media world, we don't control free speech.
Right.
And, until it turns out that, people want to say things you don't want to hear. Yes. I think it's an industry that's growing up, basically.
That's right. Oh, I see. Until people say, I missed what you meant. Yeah, it is an industry that's growing. I mean, I am seeing some tech companies that are really, really taking this seriously and approaching this the right way, and then obviously some that are not and don't really know like what happens when. Did you ever watch Silicon Valley? My TV references on the show.
No, I couldn't get past the first episode, but yes, those people annoyed me.
No, No, well, but that's the thing, right? Like what, it's this, it really looks at the whole culture of like, it's a play on Google and Facebook.
Yeah.
Like, so they had a company there called Hooli, which was like the Google of their world, and just like with the cereal bar and like all of their like scooters going around campus, and like, there's,
Yeah. It's a whole new world. Like, right, we're breaking the world, and we're hacking, and we're doing
right.
stuff. Yeah.
But what happens when, when those people start to build their lives and start to like break out of the youth bubble, the cereal bar bubble? What happens when Hooli grows up, I guess is what we're looking
Well,
at.
and also when you realize that your culture is way too leaning towards one type of person, that whole Stanford white guy, however, like 27 to 35-year-old guy. And, you're like, well, where are the women? Where are, anyone of color, so, and then you go, because it's very tactical, you do try hard, maybe you're bringing in people, but then people who are different bring different points of view. And I think that's what's, see, so we shouldn't actually have any diversity in our workforce. Done. Got it. We should all just look the same and talk the same. Everybody from Northridgeville, we'll just all make a company together. That's what we'll do. Well, so. What are companies? Are just like, you must be running into companies that are starting to have these trying to figure out a way to have fruitful conversations about this, to actually touch on their culture, to see people, right? To actually see that they have, a problem with something that's happening in their workplace.
Yeah, you mean trying to, am I seeing that companies are trying to acknowledge?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's actually a group of people that I've been working with who are all, within the big organization that I work for, like all of these small subdivisions leading, diversity related conversations and efforts. And I think there's kind of a balance of like, things like this, things like these sort of incidents, these kind of fire drills come up all the time, right? Mm. And dealing with those, granted, they're not like, let's make fun of our customers' ethnic name.
Right. Like cudgel, kind of like, well, that's bad. At least we're not doing that.
No, but I mean, some, things will happen in organizations. Like there will be something that happens between two people in a staff that hits the wrong note and needs to be addressed from a DEI perspective. There might be a press release or something that comes out that offends certain people because of a certain words that's used.
Yep,
right?
that it's a constant learning process. That I didn't know, and I apologize. So let's make it better.
But right, like also you have to be thinking about how do you not just respond to those one-off events, but how do you think strategically about how to lead around diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So there's a book called Strategic Diversity Leadership, which we can, looking across my room, we can link.
Oh, I love it. I always love when you start pulling books off your shelf. Like, I just have it.
I just have it. It's right there. I think that, really helping I think one of the analogies they use in the book is like, are you a cheetah or are you a wolf in the space of diversity leadership? We can link to.
My God. So what do I want to be?
You want to be a wolf. Like, as in Abby Wambach's wolf pack, as in like, you want to cultivate growth as opposed to kind of like reacting and responding to crises as they come up.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think what companies are doing is they need to be doing both. They do need to be responding as these things come up, but they also need to be thinking about where can we promote, opportunities for having these conversations? Where can we source people to come into our companies who don't look like the Hooli,
Yeah.
Where, a friend of mine who just took over DEI at a tech company one of the things they're doing is they're developing a partnership with historically black colleges and universities to kind of, that's a strategic move that they're making, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To build their workforce, and through these pipelines and through these connections to these universities and colleges. I mean, I think there are different ways. I think there are ways to respond to what's happening in the day to day, and then there are ways to, to start conversations at multiple levels with multiple, that have not just big groups, small groups, groups of colleagues who work together, groups of colleagues who don't work as closely together, right? Starting to kind of change the nature of conversation within your organization to be more aware, right? And
Right.
addressing these things that come up, and taking kind of a strategic approach to changing the way that the composition of the organization. All those things.
Yeah. And connecting people like up and down the ladder, like so that this isn't all just horizontal conversations, but vertical conversations
Right.
too. Right. That
Yeah.
yeah, because this seems to be a part of, in this case, a bit of like, why are they all talking about this or something? That's
Right.
what it seems to
Right.
be,
Yeah.
So, well, I'm glad we're having the conversation.
There you go.
We're always talking. So, well, when they need a good workplace consultant to help them structure these conversations, they should give you a call.
They should give
For
me
sure.
a call. I'm right here. And I know
So,
people who are doing it really
a
great.
long time.
Yeah,
A long time.
really doing it a long time.
Well, thank you for talking to me, and thank you for joining us on The Breadwinners. You will find links to what we discussed in the episode description. Email us anytime at thebreadwinnerspod@gmail.com or visit us at thebreadwinnerspodcast.com.
Please remember to subscribe to our podcast and to rate and review it. Talk about it with your friends. It really helps us grow. And until next week, keep hustling.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.